Welcome back to the 2024 election to the state of the criminal justice system. Let me fix my collar there. I got to look nice for my guests here. The arraignment of Donald Trump is bound to have lasting implications. Let's talk about the different perspectives on them. Two guests back on the show tonight. Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris, he's over there. Corinne Clark, Republican strategist from Free Press Fail, is on that side of the screen. They both brought their A games when it comes to Zoom backgrounds. Guys, thanks both for joining me. I appreciate it tonight. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Corinne, I want to start with you. We know that the former president spoke tonight, quite defiant. I don't think anybody was surprised by that. What did you think about what he had to say today?
I think Donald Trump did his best. He played majorly to his strength. I think this arraignment just helps solidify his role as this outsider candidate that feels persecuted by the corrupt system. This is just the latest in a long line of witch hunts against him. And I think he spoke a lot to that. And I think his supporters are responding to it. We've seen his poll numbers actually go up since this investigation started to heat up. And I think we'll continue to see that as this whole thing plays out in the public.
Yeah, you're right. We've seen him up double digits over Ron DeSantis. Of course, DeSantis has not announced if he's going to run for president or not here. I think we all know he will. But Jonathan, as we hear what former President Trump said, he said, and many of people on his side say again, witch hunt, 34 counts. These are not felonies. These are campaign finance violations at best here.
You know, one of the things I was taken with when I was watching this play out earlier was I was thinking to myself, I mean, if you saw Trump going in and out of the courtroom, I mean, he just looked completely defeated, just kind of deflated, defeated, kind of almost as if the seriousness of this had finally sunken in. And then when you hear him talking later, kind of what you were saying, just kind of still sort of defiant. And I just thought to myself, it reminded me of kind of those scared straight teen talk shows in the 90s where, the guy would yell at the teen and be like, do you get it? Do you finally understand kind of the seriousness of what you've done and your behavior? And I just kept looking at it thinking he doesn't get it. He still doesn't get it. To him, breaking campaign finance law, being charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records doesn't sink in at all. To him, he's going to convey it to his supporters still as he's a victim. And, oh, by the way, text Trump to 88022 so I can have money from you. But I mean, he will always portray himself as a victim and ask for money.
But we know it worked so far. He's raised about $7 million, I believe is the count, in terms of people donating since this came down. And we know, as Corinne mentioned, you have a former president who has a very passionate, very loyal base of supporters. So regardless, you have Ron DeSantis presumably in the wings once again, who is trying to position himself as the future of the party here. But Corinne, as you mentioned about the poll numbers there, we may see a process that plays out into the primary season. Once this gets into next year, once voters start going to the polls, does anything change at that point?
We'll have to wait and see. I think things change so quickly in politics. I know it's going to be an interesting game now that Republicans are kind of catching up to this new way of voting with mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. I think there are some interesting tactical changes that will dramatically impact voter turnout in the general election. In the primary, I think you're right. This has made it even more difficult for anyone who is running against Trump to close the gap at all. I think that Trump was running way ahead before. Now he's running even more ahead. And this whole situation has forced Republicans to unify with Trump on this particular issue, because this does seem like a political prosecution. This is exactly the kind of corruption that Trump ran against in 2016 and in 2020. And it's forced the entire party to come to his side. So I think he will continue to run ahead of the other candidates, and it will be very difficult for them to close that gap.
So we know, Jonathan, there are... Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
She mentions 2016, and I can't help but note the incredible irony of the fact that Trump, who ran on locking up his political opponent, Hillary Clinton, Trump, who ran on so-called law and order and draining the swamp, DC of corruption, he's the one who was indicted. He was the one who was arraigned and in court today. Not Hillary Clinton, not anybody else. He was. And again, he's not, the gravity of this is not sinking in for him. And his supporters, I get it. People support political candidates, but the Republican Party, there's a difference between your poll numbers going up within the party versus the way the American people feel about Trump. And this is another situation where, he might be popular within his own party, but outside of this, I think the average American is looking at this and realizing these are payments about, to not only Stormy Daniels, but to some other woman, possibly about some secret love child, and looking at this and going, you were doing this while you were president? You were doing this in the lead up to what is it? They called it a catch and kill scheme, where you were buying negative information to suppress it. This is who you want to run for president, and Republicans are saying, yeah, that's our offering to the United States for president. And the idea that the Republican Party doesn't think they can do any better, I don't think it's going to play out well in a general election. I mean, Trump has run twice and lost the vote twice, just happened to narrowly win the Electoral College the first time. Maybe they should move on. I think they can do better than someone facing 34 felony counts for falsifying business records.
Corinne, you wanted to say something there?
Absolutely. I think it is hilarious that you consider this ironic that Trump ran on locking up a political opponent that actually never faced an investigation, was actually never locked up. It's not ironic at all. It's a demonstration of the exact thing that he ran on. There is an elitist political class who will never be prosecuted, even if they admit to crimes. This is actually exactly what Trump said. It is not some hypocritical, like, oh my gosh, I guess he's doing what those other people, he said those other people were doing. No, those other people were committing crimes and never going to jail for it, because that ruling class is never punished for their crimes. That is why this is so popular among his base. It is because it is a demonstration of every talking point that Trump won on in 2016. And I will say, your request that we move on from a different candidate, that is another thing that's going to help Trump, because no one wants to take advice from a Democrat on who we should run.
We know.
Run him, please. Run him, please. I'm just saying, I think you can do better. I mean, run him. I mean, we have President Biden in office because you ran him again. So, I mean, that's fine. I'm just suggesting that possibly there is a better candidate. And I think it's interesting that you would suggest that there is an elitist class, and you don't think that Donald Trump, who classifies himself as a New York billionaire, is in that elitist class, that he is somehow
He's
the everyman.
He's not the ruling class, and that's different. It's not about money. It is about power, and they hold political power that Donald Trump was a threat to. That is absolutely the case. And we know Hillary Clinton funded the Russian dossier. You want to talk about funding?
It did start
negative information. He funded the Russian dossier. We wasted $93 million investigating a fake dossier, and she never paid for it, despite
by the way,
federal resources.
Time out.
And
the dossier. We know the Clinton campaign was involved eventually, but there were Republicans who initiated. There was some opposition research that's how it started.
Did they go to jail? Did they go to jail?
All right, I'll tell you.
No, they didn't. The ruling class never pays for their crimes.
Well, hey, no. I'm not here to. James Comey, they tried some investigation. We know that we saw that investigation happen right before the election.
Comey, who leaked information to the New York Times, who leaked classified information, he also never paid for his crimes. So thank you for making that point.
That's still. It's interesting. That still,
guys, we got to go.
No one on the right.
So much.
We got to go. All right, Jonathan Harris, Corinne Clark, guys, thank you both for joining us. We're back after this in the Final Five.